This special edition of the broadcast over the course of the next 30 minutes will be updating you on everything that's been happening around the world. So let's start with some international news first, where the Peruvian president, Pedro Pablo Kuczynski, has said that he worked as a financial advisor for an irrigation project owned by the Brazilian builder Odebrecht. Now, the Peruvian president has contradicted his previous denials of having had any links with the company. The Brazilian builder Odebrecht is the center of Latin America's biggest graft scandal and has admitted to paying about $13 million in terms of bribes to secure contracts in Peru for over a decade. Now, Honduras' opposition leader Salvador Nasrallah presented a formal request on Friday to the Supreme Electoral Court to have the results of the still unresolved presidential election annulled. Now, the Central American nation has been embroiled in a political crisis since the 26th of November. No clear winner has been announced by the election tribunal, and both candidates had earlier declared themselves as the winner of the presidential election. About 10,000 Israelis protested against government corruption and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in Tel Aviv on Saturday. Netanyahu is presently under criminal investigation for allegations of abuse of office in two cases. The first one involves receiving gifts from wealthy businessmen, and the second one involves negotiating a deal with a newspaper owner for better coverage in return for curbs on a rival daily. The Israeli Prime Minister has denied any wrongdoing. Governing Democrats in Italy led a rally against the potential comeback of fascism in the country. The country has suffered under the rule of fascist dictator Benito Mussolini after 1925. Now, several thousand people showed up in the town of Como in northern Italy, where the right-wing extremists calling themselves the Veneto Skinhead Front recently barged into a meeting about migrant housing and also railed about the invasion of foreigners. US President Donald Trump has called for an end to racial hatred as he's launched the opening of a museum in Mississippi dedicated to the victims of white supremacist violence in America's southern areas. However, all were not pleased with President Donald Trump at the ceremony to open the Mississippi Civil Rights Museum and the Museum of Mississippi History. The launch was boycotted by many black leaders who were part of the civil rights movement, including veteran US Congressman John Lewis and US Congressman Benin Thompson. Egypt's authorities on Saturday have revealed artifacts and a linen-wrapped mummified body, possibly that of a top official, from two tombs that were discovered 2 decades ago in the Nile city of Luxor but had not been fully unexplored. Along with the mummy, archaeologists also found painted wooden funeral masks and several hundred carved statues, likely dating around the end of Egypt's 17th dynasty. California Governor Jerry Brown will survey the destruction of the state's devastating wildfires as firefighters rush to contain the blazes before dry desert winds were expected to intensify. Now, the 6 major wildfires that erupted throughout Southern California in the past week have killed at least 1 person, destroyed hundreds of buildings, and forced more than 200,000 people to flee and the choked air across much of the region. Argentina has deported 2 British journalists, Sally Birch and Norwegian activist Peter Titland, who were all set to participate in the 11th World Trade Organization's ministerial conference. Now, upon arriving at Ezeiza International Airport in Buenos Aires, Birch, who writes for the Agencia Latino America de Información, was refused entry into the country and then sent back to Ecuador, where she lives. Now, Titland of the Attac Norge NGO was deported to Brazil and said on his Twitter page that the government of Norway would file a protest. In late November, Argentina had revoked the credentials of 63 activists who had been accredited by the WTO to attend its ministerial meeting. The most were affiliated with the Our World Is Not for Sale network that opposes the corporate globalization and has staged protests at various previous WTO meetings. The United Nations says that its political chief, Jeffrey Feltman, and North Korea's foreign minister have agreed that the current situation on the Korean peninsula is the most dangerous security issue in the world. UN Political Affairs Chief Jeffrey Feltman returned yesterday from a 4-day visit to North Korea, where he met with officials including North Korean Foreign Minister Ri Yong-ho. And Feltman's visit has come at a time of high tension between North and South Korea, Japan and the United States that's been sparked by North Korea's frequent missile launches. Feltman has told the North Koreans that there can only be a diplomatic solution for the crisis. Well, to some national news now. And India's SpiceJet airline conducted trials for the country's first seaplane in the Mumbai city. The trial is part of the private aircraft carrier's business strategy to bring small amphibious planes into operation and then promote regional connectivity via these planes. Now, these planes are capable of taking off and landing in places that lack runways and can also work on roads and water as well. The trials were attended by India's Transport Minister Nitin Gadkari and Aviation Minister Ashok Gajapati Raju. Banaras Hindu University is at the centre of a controversy for questions in its history and political science examination papers. The MA History paper asked students to discuss triple talaq and halala as social evils in Islam. The history question paper also sought views on Rani Padmavati, the character who is in the midst of a controversy for the last few weeks over stopping the release of the film by director Sanjay Leela Bhansali. Indian and British troops were briefed about special heliborne operations on Saturday by the representatives of the Indian Air Force during the ongoing joint Indo-UK military exercise Ajaya Warrior 2017. The troops later rehearsed in mounting and dismounting drill, which was followed by the actual practice of intended target area. The training contingents comprise of one company's strength each from the 20th Battalion of the Rajputana Rifles from the Indian Army and a similar strength from the 1st Battalion, the Royal Anglian Regiment of the British Army. A total of 409 gentlemen cadets, including those from abroad, completed the passing out parade on Saturday at the Indian Military Academy before being commissioned into the armies of their respective countries after completing the autumn training course. The 78 cadets from Maldives, Tajikistan, Kazakhstan, Afghanistan, Bhutan, Nepal and Sri Lanka also graduated from the IMA. The Bangladeshi Army Chief General Abu Bilal Muhammad Shafiul Haq attended the passing out parade as the reviewing officer. Haryana Health Minister Anil Vij has said today that his department had written to the Haryana Urban Development Authority to cancel the lease of land to the Fortis Hospital in Gurgaon due to alleged violations of the terms and conditions of the agreement. A state government panel probing allegations of overcharging against Gurgaon's Fortis Hospital had found several irregularities, including protocols not being followed in a case related to the death of a 7-year-old girl. Following the indictment by the panel, Vij had said that an FIR will now be lodged against the private hospital, while the license of its blood bank will be cancelled. The Enforcement Directorate has said that it has seized mutual funds valued at 10.35 crore under the FEMA law of a company controlled by businessman and former IPL chairman Chirayu Amin in the Panama Papers case. The Central Probe Agency has said that it seized the mutual funds of Whitefield Chemtech Private Limited, which is controlled by Amin and his family under Section 37A of the Foreign Exchange Management Act. The names of Amin and his family members, it said in a statement, had figured in the Panama Papers case with respect to their stakes, interests in the firm in the British Virgin Islands. A survey across 11 states in India by a corruption watchdog has resulted in 45% of the respondents claiming that they had paid a bribe at least once in the past year to get work done. The share was 43% in a similar survey that was conducted last year. Nearly 37% of the respondents felt that corruption had increased West Bengal and Madhya Pradesh fared the worst on the level of corruption. In connection with International Day of Persons with Disabilities, a program was organized by Chief Education Officer Poonch at Boys Higher Secondary School Poonch. The program was organized to create awareness amongst the people about the rights of specially abled people and the responsibility of the common masses in taking proper care. Another actress has come forward to accuse actor Dustin Hoffman of allegations of sexual harassment, calling the Oscar-winning's conduct a horrific, demoralizing and abusive experience. The accuser, Catherine Rossiter, who co-starred with Hoffman in Death of a Salesman on Broadway in 1984, said that Hoffman had assaulted her in front of the backstage crew. A few figures in French history have earned a send-off as elaborate as the one for the dubbed Frenchman Elvis, and thousands of fans gathered outside the Madeleine Church on Saturday to bid farewell to France's biggest rock, Johnny Hallyday. On Saturday, French citizens honoured Hallyday with an exceptional funeral procession down the Champs-Élysées. A presidential speech and also a motorcycle parade were conducted to bid adieu to this rock star of French pop. The HBO network has announced the return of multi-Emmy winning drama Big Little Lies for a second season. The network also announced the return of Nicole Kidman and Reese Witherspoon for the show's second season as starring and executive producers of the show. The second season's release date has not been announced yet. After nearly 7 years after Hugh Jackman is releasing his passion project, The Greatest Showman, on the 20th of December, the musical film that is loosely based on the life of American politician and circus owner P.T. Barnum held its world premiere in Brooklyn, New York on Friday.